Lemon blueberry cake is the perfect spring cake. This one is going to be on my Easter dessert table, but I will be making it all year long. It's full of all of the best flavors of spring. We have real lemon zest and fresh squeezed lemon juice, and of course fresh blueberries, which this time of year they're starting to taste a little bit better than they did in the winter, so they're amazing in this cake. This recipe makes a plush 3-layer cake, and it comes together really easily, so let's get started by preheating your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So the batter is really very simple to make. We start with 3 cups of all-purpose flour. That is 375 grams. Now I have tested this recipe with cake flour too. It works fine. You would use the same amount of weight, so it would be 375 grams of cake flour. I found cake flour didn't really make much of a difference or make it taste better or the texture better, so we just use all-purpose. Okay, next we're going to be using 1.5 cups of granulated sugar. I like all granulated sugar, no brown sugar for this recipe. Brown sugar can kind of bully the lemon flavor. Granulated sugar really helps it to shine nicely. We'll also be adding 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, which is another ingredient that helps keep the cake crumb nice and tender. 2 teaspoons of baking powder, just 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/2 teaspoon of table salt. Add that in. Let's go ahead and whisk all of these ingredients together. We want them nicely combined before we move on to the next step. And I'm sorry about my voice today if it sounds a little bit froggy or I don't know, but I just recovered from a cold my kids gave me, and anytime I get a cold, my voice disappears. Or my voice gets weird, so just bear with me. Okay, so if you've made a lot of my cakes, you may have guessed by the fact that the flour and the sugar were combined together in this bowl that we're going to be using the reverse creaming method to make this cake. So a more traditional way of making cakes is creaming together the butter and the sugar, which helps create some air bubbles and gives the cake a little bit of a lift. Reverse creaming, not invented by myself at all, but it's a technique where you beat the butter into the dry ingredients and the sugar 1 tablespoon at a time. This is going to help give the cake a finer texture. It makes it a little bit more plush. I don't use this in all of my cakes, but it works really well for this one. So I have a 1/2 cup of unsalted butter. I've cut it into tablespoon-sized pieces. The butter is softened almost to room temperature. We're going to beat in the butter 1 tablespoon at a time. And I am using my electric hand mixer today, but you can absolutely use your stand mixer instead. You would just use the paddle attachment. This method can be a little bit more time consuming than traditional creaming, but it works really well. What's happening is the butter is coating the gluten here, and it's just going to give us a more velvety texture in the cake. Also, it's going to help some of those blueberries stay a bit more suspended in the cake. You're going to notice they're not all going to be suspended. I'll talk a little bit about that later on, a little more about that, but this does give the cake a little bit more structure that way. All right, last tablespoon. Okay, I want to give you guys a close-up of the texture. So when you have fully creamed in all of your butter, the mixer should look a little bit sandy. Small, teeny tiny pieces of butter are fine, but you don't want to see any large pieces. So give you a good look at that. Okay, next thing we need is 1/2 cup of oil. So with this cake recipe, and a lot of my favorite cake recipes, I use a blend of both butter and oil. I feel like I've talked about this a whole lot, but what butter does is it adds a lot of flavor. But if you're going to be refrigerating the cake, that can really solidify in the fridge, and it can make the cake feel more dry and a little bit more crumbly. Oil does not do this. It holds up really well in the fridge, and it keeps your cake really nice and moist. But it doesn't have the same flavor as butter. So what we do is a blend of both. We get both the flavor and the moisture, and it works really, really well. So that's what we're doing here. We'll add a 1/2 cup of oil. And again, we're just going to stir this in until everything is nicely combined. You want all of your dry ingredients to be nicely moistened. Okay, so here, even after adding all of the oil, it's not a very wet batter. It's still quite dry and kind of sandy looking, but there are no pockets of dry flour, no white streaks of flour. So I'm happy with this, and we're going to move on to our wet ingredients. I'm just going to combine mine in a large measuring cup. Works really well. So for this recipe, you'll need 3/4 cup of buttermilk. And I do recommend real buttermilk. It just works better in this recipe than buttermilk substitute. It's just thicker and has a better flavor, and it's going to help give the cake a little bit more structure than the substitute, which is thinner. So for some really nice fresh lemon flavor, we're also going to be adding lemon zest. You'll want to add 2 tablespoons of lemon zest, and just grate this in here. You can grate it separately and then add it in, that's fine. I typically need 2 lemons to get enough zest. Now, quick note, when you are zesting your lemons, you want to get all of that yellow stuff, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to get the pith. So let me grate this a little further than I should over here because I want to show you what that looks like, but I don't want it in my batter. Okay, so if you see here, we're starting to get to a whiter layer. If you start to get to that white papery layer, that's the pith. It's bitter, it doesn't taste like lemon. It's not good for your cake, so do not go that far. You want to stop just before you hit that point. If you get a tiny bit of it in, don't panic, just keep going. But do be mindful about getting that in there. We're also going to be using lemon juice. Use some fresh squeezed lemon juice. Always zest your lemons before squeezing them. It's a lot harder to do that the other way around. I really think you guys are going to love this cake. The lemon flavor is so good. Everything just tastes so fresh. Beautiful. Let's add our lemon juice. This is 1/4 cup of fresh squeezed lemon juice. All right, next we need 4 large eggs. Ideally, these should be room temperature. And this cake recipe isn't a new cake recipe. I shared it on my website, I think like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's always very, very popular this time of year. This one has so many 5-star reviews. It's very well loved. I personally love it, and I just thought it was time to make a new video. Okay, finally for our wet ingredients here, we're also going to add 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. So lemon and vanilla, you have to be really careful because vanilla could overpower or like bully the lemon flavor and just make it taste not quite so fresh. We tested this cake many times, many different ways, and the vanilla actually worked really well with the lemon. It helps bring out some of the vanilla cake flavor without bullying the lemon. So they paired well, and the cake was better with a small bit of vanilla than it was without. So let's stir this together. We want to get those egg yolks nicely broken up. Let's bring back our big bowl of, I was going to say dry ingredients, but other ingredients. And we are just going to gradually drizzle in this buttermilk lemon mixture. I don't do it all at once. Adding it gradually helps things combine properly, and it will help keep your batter lump-free, which is just going to mean more even, prettier cakes. And I just keep my mixer on low speed. This smells so fresh and lemony. We haven't even added the blueberries yet, but we want to take a look and scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl because we want to make sure the batter is uniform and smooth and there are no big lumps or anything in here. And a lot of time that thicker batter will sit on the bottom of the bowl. We're just making sure we're all good here. All right, now we will add our blueberries. This is 2.5 cups of fresh blueberries. And then just gently fold these in with your spatula. Don't use your electric mixer for this step. Gently incorporate them into the batter. You're going to find in this cake that a lot of the blueberries are going to sink. So you'll flip it over and you'll say, oh my gosh, over half of my blueberries sank to the bottom of the cake. This is fine. We made this cake so many times and we were absolutely able to knock out versions where the blueberries stayed completely suspended. None of them fell to the bottom, but none of the cakes were as good. So here we have a cake that's baking up into 3 pretty thin layers. Even if all of your blueberries were to fall to the bottom, which they won't, you won't really notice it once you slice in. They're very well distributed because it's 3 layers of cake, so the blueberry blends really nicely and the cake is still beautiful. So sometimes people will say, oh, we'll toss the blueberries in flour or we'll do this or that. And while you can do that, you're also adding more flour into the batter of the cake. It does make the cake a little bit drier and we just prefer it this way. I just want to give you all of the information so you can make your own decisions about what you're going to do with the cake. So let's go ahead and evenly divide this into our cake pans. These are 3 8-inch cake pans. They are greased and floured, all the extra flour is tapped out, and then they're lined with these parchment paper rounds, which are a game changer. They will ensure your cakes do not stick. So you don't have to have any of those panic moments when you flip your cakes out of the pan. Let me see if I can divide these evenly. And these aren't even in the oven and they already smell amazing. Get all of that batter. Go ahead and spread these evenly. All right, these are going over to our 350-degree Fahrenheit preheated oven. Bake them on the center rack. They typically need to bake for about 30 minutes, and I always check that they're done by inserting a toothpick in the center. If that comes out clean or with a few moist crumbs, they're finished baking. You'll let the cakes cool in their pans for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then you'll want to carefully run a knife along the outside and invert it onto a cooling rack to cool completely. Beautiful. And it is important that you let these cakes cool completely 100% before you decorate them with frosting. Okay, once your cakes have cooled completely, now we can decorate them. Now for frosting, I'm going to recommend either my lemon frosting, which is made with lemon curd. It's beautiful, probably my favorite, or my lemon cream cheese frosting. Both are good options. And I do have videos for both of those. I'll do a nice layer of frosting in the center. Cake number 2. Now in my experience, these cakes usually bake up nice and flat, but if yours don't, you can absolutely level them. Smooth the icing this time a bit. I think I went a little too heavy. Cake number 3. So for a lightly flavored spring cake, I kind of go a little heavier on the filling and I do a nice like semi-naked frosting on the outside. That way some of the blueberries and the cake can shine through. I just kind of like that. And then I made a little extra frosting just for decorating the top. And it's a little warm in here. My frosting's a little soft, so I'm just going to pop this in the fridge for like 15 or 20 minutes before I cut into it. First, a little blueberry decoration. Okay, I popped this into the fridge for a couple minutes so it's easier to slice and not messy. Let's go ahead and get Get our first piece out of here. Slicing cakes on camera always makes me nervous because the first slice is never very pretty. Ta-da! First one's always messy, so I'm going to try to cut a prettier slice. All right, that is how you make my favorite cake of the springtime season. Fresh blueberries, bright lemon flavor, and I don't know if you can see how velvety, soft, and plush this crumb is. I really think you're going to like this one. Maybe you've already tried it. If so, I would love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. My favorite part. I gotta go for another piece. That's so good. Oh my gosh. Kids gave me a cold, and when I get a cold, my voice goes away.
It's actually because she was singing the Star Spangled Banner so many times. At her children. Ella's here for the bite shop.
Hey, cutie. What the heck is going on up there? Slice. Oh no! Somebody's still a little under the weather.